site. And both of these, if you're interested in citizen activism, are worth thinking about. And I mean what I said about this being an open and democratic process. Your state board of education, of course, is drawn from all over the states. In case you've wondered or forgotten what your board of education rep looks like, there they are. If you're from the Austin area, Cynthia Dunbar and Ken Mercer are two of your representatives in this area. You should not underestimate the power of a couple of citizen phone calls or letters to influence your representative on the State Board of Education. This really is a democracy. Texas is very open about this. And if you don't play a role in this process and you don't like it, how it comes out, you really got only yourselves to blame. And these are the people that you should be carrying the message of science to. Now, let me go back to sort of the general large message that I've been talking about. At the end of the Dover trial, many people suggested that the verdict that came out in our favor was a victory of science over faith. Sorry, I forgot the why there. And a lot of people, I saw newspaper articles arguing that it's God versus science in a Pennsylvania courtroom and that sort of stuff. A lot of us involved in our side of the case were surprised at this. Of the 11 plaintiffs involved in the case, 7 of them are professing Christians, 3 of them are Sunday school teachers, and 1 of them runs a summer Bible camp. And the notion that these plaintiffs were somehow anti-religious simply flew in the face of reality. Nonetheless, this was a common impression. Why is that? Part of the intentional strategy of the anti-evolution movement, what Philip Johnson from Berkeley called the wedge strategy, is to portray evolution as being anti-God. And Johnson said, the objective of the intelligent design strategy is to convince people that Darwinism is inherently atheistic. That'll shift the debate from creation versus evolution to the existence of God versus the non-existence of God. Then we can introduce people to the truth of the Bible, the question of sin, and finally introduce them to Jesus. Any person who tells you that intelligent design is not religiously motivated, once again, remind them of what the founder of the movement, Philip Johnson, said his intention was. Clearly religious. If you were to Google creation versus evolution into the web and look for images, you come up with websites with little graphics like this that kind of like weigh creation and evolution against each other, as though it's one or the other. My co-author, Joe Levine, knows I use this slide, and a couple of months ago he called me up and said, Ken, you know that scale? Yeah, I said, yeah, I know the slide. He says, you'll never guess the photo I saw on the website of a Christian school in the upper Midwest. And this was the photo he saw, and there's a biology teacher there, and that's our textbook, and look what he's weighing it against. Although when I looked at that, I did take a certain amount of satisfaction from the fact that apparently it takes 2 Bibles to outweigh one of our textbooks. But I want to make a point here. And the point is, you see this image of conflict between biology and religion. And that's really what you see in this photograph. And I want to give you an example of what I mean by that. Lots of you, I'm sure, have seen this symbol, the ichthys, the Christian symbol of redemption on lapel pins, bumper stickers, stuff like that. Well, a few years ago, some evolutionary biologists knew about that and said, let's have a little fun. And let's turn that image around. We'll make the Darwin fish that has little incipient Tiktaalik style evolving legs. Well, Christians have a sense of humor too. They said, oh, really? We know what we're going to do with that, which is you have the truth fish eating the Darwin fish. And if I had to put one of these on the bumper of my truck, it would be the Darwin fish kissing the Jesus fish or something like that. Now, I want to go further with this. And I know I'm at a top-notch educational institution. The room is filled with brilliant people. Lots of you who are students, later on in your careers, you're going to be working for advanced degrees, master's degrees, doctoral degrees. A lot of you are going to have to write a thesis. And anybody who's done it will tell you one of the hardest parts about writing a thesis is coming up with a really good thesis topic. So I'm going to help you out tonight. Depending on the field that you're in, I got the thesis topic for you. Write your thesis on the iconography of the fish in American culture, because it is so wide. And I'll give you an example. Just to help you out, I have constructed a preliminary classification of the fish. Here's the religious side. Here's the scientific clade. And then my personal favorite, the culinary clade, is over here on this side. Now, I don't want to spoil you. I don't want to do all the work for you. So there are some things that I just don't know how to classify. And you're going to have to do those on your own. One of them is right up here. And I should also tell you that every now and then, I make mistakes and I leave things out. And about a year ago, I had the privilege of giving a lecture at Yeshiva University in New York, which is, of course, a Jewish school. And I wasn't sure if the Jewish students there would get, the Christian symbolism of the fish, but I tried it anyway. And a group of young men came up to me afterwards and said, "Oh, we understood that. It was very good. We liked that." I said, "Oh, that's great." They said, "But you left an important fish out." And they were absolutely right. So courtesy of those students, I have one more fish to add. But I show this in part because I want to make a serious point. And that is, every time you talk about evolution, this idea of conflict between science and religion comes up. I want to give an example of how quickly a discussion on evolution turns to a discussion about religion. Now, I've edited it so it doesn't take up too much time, but you'll recognize it. It's from one of those educational channels that most of you watch to sort of supplement your studies. You'll recognize this educational network right away.
Our guest is a professor of biology at Brown University and a leading critic of intelligent design. I'm going to ask him where he gets off. Please welcome Ken Miller. Thank you so much for doing the show. This is such a thrill for me.
It's a thrill for me.
Let me ask you something. Walk me through. I want to give you a shot here. Explain evolution from the primordial soup to how I got here today in my limo.
Oh, well, that's it.
Walk me through it. Take 30 seconds.
Okay. How about if we crawl? Basically, what evolution tells us is that we are united. We're put together in a fabric of life with every other living thing on this planet. Up until about, 200-300 years ago, people thought that life on Earth had never changed. But they immediately became aware at the end of the 17th and 18th century that life had changed. And the process of change, explaining that, has been one of biology's biggest projects for the last 150 years. And that explanation is evolution.
Speaking of designers, you're a Catholic.
Yes, sir.
I am a Catholic also. Have you forgot the creed? Jesus, through him all things were made.
For us men and for our salvation. I remember all this very well.
Okay.
But there's also,
don't you see a conflict there? You got to choose.
No, there's not a conflict. There's not a conflict,
There
and you
isn't?
don't have to choose. And here's the problem. The biggest thing that the opponents of evolution have going for them is a fiction. It's not true. And that is the idea that evolution and religion have to be in opposition to each other. Mm-hmm. What it amounts to, in a sense, is that I have a higher opinion of God than the people who favor intelligent design, because they think he's sort of a little pedestrian God who has a lot of cheap tricks. He had to design this. Whoops, it went extinct. He designed that. It went extinct. The fossil museums of the world are filled with his mistakes. My view is that I've got a higher opinion. This is a guy who was so clever that he set a process in motion that gave rise to everything on this planet, and you and me and maybe even Bill O'Reilly.
You know what? I agree with you about O'Reilly. All right? I think O'Reilly could be so involved that he's one of the X-Men. Okay, now, let me ask you something. You think God is that clever. I think God is so clever that he just made it look like there's a fossil record. Isn't God powerful enough that he just sort of put all those dino bones down in there to give us the illusion we've been here for a while? Well, in fact, nothing existed before I was born.
So your theory is essentially what I would call the Steve Martin theory of evolution, which is that God put all these things down here just to show us he's a wild and crazy God. Well, I don't reject that for scientific reasons. I reject it for theological ones, which is that I don't choose to believe in a deceptive creator.
Mr. Miller, will you come back? We've got to go now, but will you please come back on another show and explain to me this whole sun doesn't go around the earth thing?
We'll work on it.
Okay. Ken Miller, thank you so much.
Thank you. I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did being on that show, although especially if you're involved in university administration, I do have some very sad news for you. And that is, nothing I have ever done in my entire professional career has ever gained for me the respect with my students of being on the Colbert Report. and I'm not sure that says anything positive about higher education. But I do